You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. This is episode number 89, and the title is Helping Women Change Careers with my good friend Ann Vertel. On Leading the Factory Forward, my goal is to help you create a compelling future for yourself, your teams, and your organizations. I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode, so you can use that as a tool to capture notes as you explore the concepts in this episode. Or to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, please download the free worksheet, 3 steps you need for a more productive workday. Well, I'm honored today to have my friend Ann Vertel, who is a motivational psychologist, retired naval officer, and high-performance speaker, trainer, coach, and consultant as my guest. After retiring from a 20-year career in the military and getting her doctorate in psychology, Ann began coaching women, especially women in leadership and high-performance skills, and fell in love with watching them transform and succeed. For Ann, the key to success is to take charge, take full responsibility for everything we think, say, and do, so that we can show up, step up, and live up to this, the one and only life we've been given. So, some of the questions that we'll discuss with Ann are, what are the mindset changes she needed to make as she started her new career? How did she determine how her expertise might fit into a customer's needs? What new skills or technologies did she have to develop in this new career? What kind of people helped her on her journey as she started this new encore career? And how did she actually practice and develop her needed skills? Welcome to Ann. Well, again, my thanks to Ann Vertel for joining us today, and glad to have you here. And so I'll just start off by asking Ann, introduce yourself and your background and let us know what you're up to.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for having me. My name's Ann Vertel, and I am a work-at-home coach and speaker, trainer, facilitator. I do a variety of different things. I knew after a 20-year career as a naval officer that I wanted to be working from home. So I figured out how to do it. It's been almost 18 years that I've been doing it now, and I love it because I can make my own hours. And let's see, what's my motto? My rules, my hours, my dress code. I think that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm doing.
Great. Well, I wonder, and again, some of these, I think my questions might be for you to answer or for you to, reflect on the people you've worked with over the years. But the first one would be, when you made that change from your career, the military, to individual work, did you notice some mindset changes that you had to make and some things you just had to think differently about?
What? You mean going from the buttoned up world of the military to the wild, wild west of entrepreneurship? Nah, there's changes that have to be made in your mindset. Absolutely. So I think the biggest shift was knowing that I was driving everything. I needed to drive what I wanted to accomplish, when I wanted to accomplish it. I was responsible for my own success and my own failure. There was many of those along the way too. But that was the biggest shift, was going from sort of an employee mindset to a creative mindset, being a creator. That was the biggest shift for me. And I loved it. It was wonderful. It's also, it's thrilling, it's exciting, and it's also really, really scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I noticed from my experience was I'd always thought of myself in terms of my titles and positions, but in terms of trying to connect with others, all of a sudden, one, they didn't know what they were, and two, they had their own issues they wanted to work on.
Well, that's a really good point, Lynn, because in the military, of course, we wear our titles and positions. And there's a lot of people that when they retire from the military have a very hard time transitioning because they think that's who they are, not just what they did or what their role was. And you'll find that for some of them, they get out and they still want to be called by their title. So I knew right away, as soon as I got out, I'm Ann going forward, and that's it. And that felt wonderful to just sort of sink into that and soak that up and really kind of get back in touch with who I really am. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, absolutely. When you retire from the military, you spend a certain amount of time stepping outdoors and wondering where your cover is, your hat, and then also knowing that you're not displaying anything on you that says who you are. Although I did say I was never going to wear a name tag again.
So as you've worked with other women in leadership positions and stuff, any observations on how they look at themselves? And maybe there's a different way that women change their mindset on these issues than men do, for all I know.
Yeah, that's a great question, too. I've worked with a number of women who leave the corporate world and move out into entrepreneurship, as well as women veterans as well. And that's a big part of it, is just getting back in touch with who they are. Because, when we're in a corporate setting or any type of large organization, we're playing a role. And we can even alter our personality. Well, you can't really alter your personality, but we can alter our temperament and the way we show up. And that comes through a lot when you take some temperament disorders or personality assessments, that we will adapt to what our environment is. So for women, when they step out of sort of the corporate world and they start to lead their own enterprises, one of the biggest shifts I've noticed is a sense of freedom, that they definitely feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have to wear high heels anymore. I don't have to wear a suit anymore. I don't have to pretend like I'm, more important or something. But I do notice that a lot of them go through a sense of having this imposter syndrome. So they've got all this fantastic expertise, these skills and talents and experience and expertise. And then they go out into this, wild, wild west of entrepreneurship, and they start to feel like, oh my gosh, I got nothing. I got nothing. I can't help anybody. So, and I assume everybody goes through that to a certain degree, but that would be my biggest observation.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is just, at least for me, it was a matter of sitting back and saying, okay, I've created a lot of value for the company, for people. What's the value as opposed to what was the position, kind of a thing? That leads into the next question is, as you made this shift to where you were helping others as an individual, how did you go about explaining your value to others? Please work with me and this is what I'll give to you. I'm sure your background carried some weight because it showed your experience and knowledge, but you still had to explain yourself differently, I think.
Yeah, so obviously the leadership piece played a big role, having been, especially being a female naval officer. So a lot of the women that hired me for that reason, leadership skills and, team building and that kind of thing. And so it really, for me, it was a matter of realizing that I had those skills to start with, because when you work in an organization and everybody's sort of running at the same speed, you kind of don't necessarily realize the skills that you gained over time. So I got out and realized I actually do know a lot about leadership and leading teams. And it was a matter of finding out what they wanted to do. So it wasn't just, hey, here's all these great things that I can bring to the table. It was, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What's your end game? And what's this transformation that you hope to have in working with a coach or somebody who's going to facilitate, or even as a consultant? When I would go in and work as a consultant for companies, what is the end game? What are they trying to achieve with their teams?
Sounds like you also really, I'm sure you had them before, but you really accentuated your listening skills as opposed to your giving direction skills, I guess I'll say.
That's a common myth, I think, that people assume that in the military, all we do is run around and give orders. In the 20 years I was a naval officer, I never actually gave an official order, and I saw very few people who did. That's not what real leadership is. And there are a lot of real leaders in the military. And that's about having people show up and do what they need to do, whether you're there or not, and motivating them to align to the mission. And that there's some pretty exceptional leaders in the military. So, obviously, everyone can improve their listening skills. For me, it was that I started working as a business coach and an executive coach. And in the process of that, I kind of did it backwards. There's a lot of psychologists that decide to become coaches because they don't want to do therapy anymore and they don't want to deal with helping sick people become healthy. They want to help healthy people become extraordinary. And for me, I was a coach for a while. And then I decided, I really wanted to go back to school and become a psychologist. So in the midst of this career shift, after about 10 years, I decided to go back and get my doctorate in psychology. And so I was able to bring that back to the table as far as listening skills were concerned. And then the whole dynamic with personality and temperament and how all of that stuff plays into leadership. And so I kind of did it backwards, but I would like to think my listening skills are better now, but we can always improve.
Yeah. Well, I think that whole package of, I'll call them the soft skills, that's a piece that sometimes we gain with age, but not everybody gains it equally with age. So that's always something you can help others, again, build those soft skills that maybe they either haven't had or they need to enhance also.
Yeah. And if those skills were so soft, you'd think everybody would be really good at them.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like in my work out there, people say, well, everybody's teaching leadership, but then everybody's saying what they lack is leadership skills. So clearly we haven't got that nailed down yet.
Well, and for me, it's really, I think a lot of the leadership programs that exist miss the most fundamental piece, which is personal leadership. And that's really where my jam is. I am 100% a believer in the fact that we are 100% responsible for everything we think, say, and do. So personal leadership is key. If you don't have that, if you can't lead yourself first, then there's no way that you can properly lead other people. And I think that's where a lot of those leadership programs fail. So anytime I put together a leadership program or do any consulting or coaching for people on leadership, that's where it starts, is you have to have a fully developed personal leadership program first.
Sure, absolutely. I would totally agree. I've worked with a coaching program on emotional intelligence, and the very first two steps are self-awareness and self-management. Start there before you even try to work on helping other people.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'd be curious too, what kind of new skills did you have to develop? You mentioned the psychology, but I know you also do podcasting. You have a website. What are some of the other skills you developed?
So it's funny because I just feel like I've just, hacked my way through all of those. So when I retired 18 years ago, I built a website and I had to build it just using HTML. So I was working my way through all of that, right? And I hired somebody, I think, if I recall correctly, to write some PHP code because I had developed a membership program, which was brand new back then. I had to learn email marketing and how to write newsletters. Obviously, my writing skills, I think, improved over time as well. But there was the tech piece. And I wasn't afraid of it. I actually really liked it. It fed the left side of my brain really well. And it was fun. And I continue to do a lot of that myself. I kind of geek out on that stuff too. So it's the tech. And right now, what's really cool for people who are getting out of corporate and starting their own businesses now is that the tech is so much easier. It's so much more drag and drop and plug and play. And, there's tutorials and all that kind of stuff that didn't exist 2 decades ago. So if people are concerned about that, about learning the tech, I would say absolutely don't. And just plow into it. Just, take a Saturday and learn how to, operate some of these tech pieces. So that shouldn't hold people back. And there's plenty of people out there that are experts at it. You can hire them to do it.
Yeah. I always encourage people that when they're planning this encore career is that, one, they have to own their own expertise and be comfortable in that they have that. But two, they have to be willing to be novices in some other things that they may not have experience in. And then, as you said, you can easily do it yourself, but there's also people that without hiring a whole bunch of full-time people, you can hire people to do pieces of work for you.
Yeah, just do the part that's fun. It's fun for you. Hire the rest of it up.
So again, thinking about your transition you've seen other people make, what are some of the people that you connected with that either helped you or that helped you grow, those kinds of things as you move forward in your journey?
Yeah, good question. There have been people all along the way that have helped me. You've been one of them. I think working with some business coaches was helpful. I think being in a mastermind, I've been in several masterminds that have been helpful. I've run my own masterminds where I've also learned from the people in those. So anytime that I was able to sort of get outside of my own house, I'm running a business out of my home office, it's nice to connect with people along the way. I would say those people, and anytime that I went to conferences, I always met sort of kindred souls. Some of my very best friends now I met at conferences, and we've just sort of, done parallel play along the way, building our own businesses together. And that's been a lot of fun. So you can do it on your own, but you're not going to be successful. You have to work with other people and you have to have an abundant mindset. I think if you go into business thinking that it's all about competition, you're not going to do well. The world is huge and you can have a mobile global business and you can have colleagues who have the exact same client base and you can absolutely be abundant mindset together. You just refer people back and forth because I have friends of mine that do the exact same thing I do. And I will often run into a client or somebody who's interested in working with me and it's just not a fit. So I'll refer them over to somebody else. I mean, there's plenty to go around. So I think if you can surround yourself with people who are givers and not takers and people who have an abundant mindset, they want to collaborate and they just really, really get excited about watching you succeed, then those are the people to, put in your little inner circle.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned the global part of it. It was interesting to me to learn. I have a very small audience by podcast, but I have a very dedicated core in India. And how that happened, I'm not entirely sure, but it's just one of those things. It's interesting how in today's world, we truly do live in a global village. So you're not just talking to the people in your community anymore. You can be talking to almost anybody and helping anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too, because my client base has sort of shifted over time too, based on, who was attracted to what I was doing or what type of people were interested in making the types of changes they were as well. So, it's being open to those kind of changes and who God brings into your life and who you can best help. I mean, you just show up and help people, and the rest of it kind of, leads you down the right path.
And you mentioned earlier, when people you feel aren't a good fit, they're not bad people, they're just not a good fit for you and your work, you refer them to others. Have you gotten to that spot where you really want to work with people who are a good fit for you rather than just anybody who will pay you money?
Yeah, absolutely, Lynn. And this past year has helped me realize that as well, even more. Of course, when you first start working, you're just going to work with anybody, right? You aren't sure anybody's ever going to ever hire you or pay you for your expertise. And you discover pretty quickly that no, if you do a good job, people will hire you. And for me, it was a little bit of a winding journey. I worked with a lot of women who were in multi-level companies when I first got out because they were building teams. And these were the senior directors in these different companies. So what they were doing was they needed leadership skills. And they started off starting some business on a card table in their back bedroom. And then the next thing you know, they had 300 people on their team and they didn't know how to lead them. But I had never intended to do that. That was not where I was going. And then over time, I started working with women who were in the corporate world who wanted to transition out. I actually did my doctoral dissertation on the entrepreneurial mindset. So that was really helpful in helping them as well. And then I really wanted to work with women veterans. So I started working with them for a couple of years. And even that I found was challenging because we may have had common experiences, but we weren't necessarily sharing the same values. So my biggest lesson, which, even after doing this for 18 years, I've really just learned in the past, say, year and a half, is that we should build our businesses based on the values that we share with the people we want to serve. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, at least for myself, I did not feel that I was in congruence with what I was doing if I was working with people who had a different value set than I did. And it was challenging for me because I always felt like I had to couch my words or walk on eggshells or, not insult people, or not that I would insult people, but, it didn't fit. And not only, do your clients have to fit with you, but you have to fit with your clients. So I think for anybody first getting out and building a business, they need to take a hard look at what their values are and don't stray from them.
Right. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of people who have values that are congruent with yours. You're not one of a kind, probably.
Well, that's the weird part. Once I got really clear on that, it was amazing how quickly they started showing up. Because I think once you stand for something and you aren't afraid to make some waves, people are going to love you or hate you. I mean, if you're middle ground, you're not going to do well. If you're just running down the center lane, you don't want to, don't want to insult anybody. You don't want to, your business is going to just kind of be mediocre. But if you stand for something, you're definitely going to ostracize people, but you're also going to attract people to you. And the people that you attract to you will be those that you want to work with.
Yep, absolutely. That's great. Well, my last question is kind of a tactical one almost, but how did you find the time either to do your creative work or just practice your HTML? Again, I think as people leave the corporate structure, leave the structure of their daily life, you can do anything you want during the day. How did you structure it so you learned things and got your creative work done?
Well, I hate to tell you this, but you would think that somebody that was in the military for 20 years would be a structured person, but I was not really. I think I was sort of an entrepreneur in a military uniform. And so for me, it was very challenging. Like most of us that get out and start working from home, I just let it take over. And I was working at all odd hours of the night or nonstop for 15 hours, that kind of thing. So I don't have it down pat, that's for sure right now. I do recognize the fact that there are certain things I need to do to honor my energy level. I'm an extrovert, so I need to get out of the house first thing in the morning, whether it's to go for a run or, walk the dog or go somewhere and, talk to people. And then I can come back in and spend a couple of hours doing my creative work. So for me, I'm most creative in the morning. That's when I need to do my writing or podcast episodes and stuff. And then any of the tech stuff I do in the afternoon. So I think that was a big part of it for me, was recognizing when I'm the most productive and creative and on what type of tasks. And once I got that down, it seemed to fall into place.
Great. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. So as we wrap up here, I still want to circle back and have you describe the things you're up to today's world and what are the programs you're offering or what are the services how you're trying to help people moving forward.
Thanks, Lynn. Well, I'm working with organizations that really want to leverage the power of personal development and personal leadership for their people in order to bring out the best in their people and establish a culture of excellence. So anybody that is interested in that can always find me at annvertel.com. And then I have another sort of a project that I don't know what you call it, a passion project, I guess. And that is helping women who really believe in American values. And that's at AmericanWomenInBusiness.com. Those are women that want to build their businesses, their own businesses, particularly, a home-based business, a small business, and really believe in the principles that support small business success. So yeah, AnnVertel.com and AmericanWomenInBusiness.com.
Well, thank you, Ann. And we will have links to those in the show notes also so people can easily find you. But again, I thank you very much for this opportunity to talk. If people have questions, by all means, I'll encourage them to contact you.
Thanks, Lynn. Can I say one more thing? If you're even on the fence about doing this, about, leaving the corporate world and the structure and what we commonly think of as security, don't wait. Just do it. It's so rewarding. It's enormously, like I said before, it's scary and frightening and it's all of those things, but it is so much more rewarding than you can even imagine because you're able to take all of that experience and expertise and skills and talents and gifts and laser focus them in on helping the people you really want to help. And you get to do it under your own rules. And I would say do it sooner rather than later because we need you out here.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks, Ann. And you have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Again, my thanks to Ann for sharing her perspectives and journey that she's made on her own transition and how she is now helping other entrepreneurs. As a recap, we talked about these ideas. What were the mindset changes she needed to make? How did she determine how her expertise might fit a customer's needs? What new skills, technology or otherwise, did she have to develop? What type of people helped her on her journey? How did she actually practice and develop her new and needed skills? So, what's up next? Well, we're going to continue a mix of solo episodes and interviews with experts, some in manufacturing, but also some in other leadership areas that can help you build your business or yourself. Also, I will be sharing my ideas on becoming a silver entrepreneur or starting an encore career, and also how silver talent might be able to help you in your business. And as always, I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode as you start exploring the ideas from this episode. Or to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, download the free worksheet, 3 steps you need for a more productive workday. And finally, stay tuned to this podcast to learn about a free webinar that I'm planning on 4 questions that will improve your encore career selection. So again, stay tuned to hear more about that. Well, thanks for listening. And in the resources, we'll have the link to Ann Vertel's website and her podcast for your reference so that you can connect with her if you'd like. Again, thanks again. See you next time.